unfortunately, I'm not going to have a computer that works today. You guys don't need notes, right? You got your Bibles? You got enough of the Bible? Okay. So, like Pastor Ben was talking about, we want to be people that grow and don't get complacent. One thing that's really easy to do in, like you said, the shoe swap, but also in just a small town, is to remain small-minded. One thing we don't want to do is remain small-minded. Because if we stay small-town minded and not realize what God is up to regionally and in the world, we can get complacent and stuck. And not moving forward doesn't mean you're staying still as a church. Not moving forward means you're going backwards. Church is like walking up and down escalator, right? Just like marriage, just like working at anything. If you stand still and you want to beat that escalator, you've got to keep walking. I used to do that in the mall because I was going to beat that escalator. My mom's like, "You idiot, you're walking down the wrong escalator." She's going up the up one and I'm running up the down one, and people coming down the down one are getting mad at me. And but that's church. We have to move forward or we will go backwards. Protectionism never works in the church, where you want things to be they were when you perhaps started the church. I'll tell you a true story about my dad's experience in Quesnel. First Baptist Church at Quesnel started on the west side in a tiny little building, tiny little building. And the Pentecostal church downtown got too big for their building, so they moved up the hill to Quesnel and built a new facility. And then they were selling their downtown one, which was twice as big as the one that we were in. So First Baptist moved into the downtown church. And then First Baptist got too big for the downtown church. And they were sensing God's call to purchase some property up on North Star Road. And at that point, the church was 175 people. So it was comfortable, a little bigger than this. Everybody knew everybody. You know, it was really exciting when somebody came to Christ. But people were coming to Christ to the point where we needed more room. So they entered a campaign to build North Star Church up on North Star Road. And we moved into the rec center across the street from our property where we were building. So every week we'd come to the rec center, which had a big gym where we had church like this. And then it was kind of cool because there was a coffee bar and the swimming pool. So people would come and they loved coming there. And people that weren't Christians yet really liked coming to the rec center. And the church grew from 175 to 250 in the rec center. And every week we'd see the church go up like this because we were building it during the week. So it was really cool to meet in the rec center, growing the church, and watch the church go up, literally, and then move in across the street when it was done a year later. And then the church grew to 400, and then it grew to 450. And all of a sudden, my dad was getting complaints. Church doesn't feel the way it used to, and I really miss it. Because now the church was 450 people instead of 175. And then some people that were complaining about that left the church because they just didn't feel it was their church anymore. And they went to a smaller church. And the church continued at that size. And then we got to see God moving in action. But that meant we had to move with him. Or you got stuck. Right? You don't want to get stuck. One thing you don't want to do is get stuck in your growth as a Christian. And you want to stretch yourself as a Christian. And it's very important. Now, I'm going to tell you a story about some monks. You ready? You know what monks are? These monks took a vow of celibacy, and they took a vow of silence. So for 1 year, these monks would remain silent. Okay? Once a year, someone was allowed to speak at breakfast on one given day. So they would pick one monk to stand up and say something. After 1 year, at the appointed day, a monk was chosen to say a few words. So as everyone sat down at the meal, in great anticipation of what this monk would say with his one chance to say something, before there was another 12 months of silence, the monk stood up and he said, "I think the oatmeal at these meals is far too runny." And he sat down. 12 months had to pass again before the next guy could speak. The next guy got up a year later, and everybody was in great anticipation of what this monk would say. And this monk said, "I find the oatmeal at these breakfasts far too lumpy." And he sat down. That was it. And now another 12 months had to pass. right? 12 months passed, and they picked their third monk in 3 years to be able to say something. And he stood up, and he said, "I'm really tired of arguing about oatmeal." And he sat down. Now, the subject today has been addressed as sparingly as the monks speaking in the last 8 years. We're going to talk about your money. And some of you right now are thinking, man, there's so few people here, I could get to the door without Bob seeing me, I would. But we're going to talk about whether your trust is in God or in the pantry. And that's coming from a Bible story in the book of 1 Kings. So if you guys could turn there in your Bibles, it's 1 Kings, and it is chapter 17. So that's going to put you around page 275 in your Bibles. I look back on the times that we've spoken about money in this church in 8 years. Pastor Mel Reimer, who was the lead pastor, we talked about him before, he spoke about money once our first year and a half into this church, 2 years in. And then the last time we spoke about money was when we were going through the book of Acts, and I talked to you guys about the time the disciples would collect money for the poor from the Christians, and they would put the money in the church coffers, and then the apostles would go feed the poor and do the work of the ministry. And Paul talked about that when he said that guys like me, whose full-time job is to do ministry, you guys pay me. I don't know if you guys know that, but that's the truth. The Vatican doesn't pay us as a church. The fellowship doesn't have a headquarters in Langley that sends us money every month. You guys run the church. And so when we're talking about money, it is something that I've probably been a little too sparing in talking about in 8 years. Now, you got to know my heart behind that is I'm a really nice guy. And I love people. And I had somebody say to me in this town about 6 years ago, I want to come to your church, but I don't have any money. And my heart was, well, we just want you. We don't want your money. And I don't want it to be the kind of church like my friend Kirk went to as a kid, where one day I'm over playing Cowboys and Indians with my friend Kirk, and his mom is raging in the kitchen because the United Church has sent them a bill in the mail because they haven't paid their tithe. And Kirk's mom was just like, oh, I'm never going back to that church. And I'm like, yikes. I said, my church doesn't send you bills. And she's like, you got a good church, so I'm going to come to your church. And she didn't ever come. But I was the pastor's kid, and I'm like, I hope this lady doesn't hit me because I go to a church. But, when it comes to your growth as a Christian, there comes a point in your life where you've got to have your faith in God. And your faith in God isn't determined, I would say it this way. Your faith quotient is determined by your bank records online in real life. Your faith quotient is determined by how you spend your money. Because how you spend your money shows you what your heart's like, right? And so when I'm watching Dateline NBC and I see a guy who is a street racer and he spends $5,000 a month on his streetcar, and his wife's in the kitchen with another reporter crying because she hasn't got enough money for the bread and the milk. You know where that schmuck's faith is, and his treasure is in his car, not in his feeding his wife and kids. Certainly not feeding the poor in any stretch. But we're going to read this, and then we're going to take a few points from here and see what God's got to say to our hearts today, okay? It's 1 Kings 17, and it's page 275. We're going to start at the beginning of the chapter, and we're going to read down a little ways to verse 16. Now Elijah, he was from Tishbe in Gilead, he was a prophet, told the evil king Ahab, as surely as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, the God I serve, there will be no dew or rain during the next few years until I give word. The context of this is that King Ahab was so evil, he was worshiping the god Baal and sacrificing children, and they were doing this sick, twisted, evil religion, demon worship, really. And because Ahab was leading his country astray, God sent Elijah, and Elijah said, God's not going to give your country any rain for 3 years. You had to smarten the country up. They were doing such evil things. Okay, so that's the context. Verse 2. Then the Lord said to Elijah, go and hide by the Kerith brook, because Ahab wants to kill you. And near it, where it enters the Jordan River. Verse 4, drink from the brook and eat what the ravens bring you. For I have commanded them to bring you food. Now that is something I wouldn't be too keen on myself. You're camping, you're hiding out from an evil king who wants to kill you, and God is sending crows with chicken nuggets in their hand for you. Here's your meal. Well, thanks, Lord. Could you have chosen like something noble? Like, I don't know, like an eagle, I don't know, but a crow, a raven. But that's how God fed Elijah. Okay? Continue on, verse 5. So Elijah did as the Lord told him and camped beside the Kerith brook, east of the Jordan. The ravens brought him bread and meat each morning and evening, and he drank from the brook. But after a while, the brook dried up, for there was no rainfall anywhere in the land. So now Elijah is going to start, right? Continue on with me, verse 8. Then the Lord said to Elijah, go and live in the village of Zarephath, near the city of Sidon. I have instructed a widow there to feed you. So he went to Zarephath, and as he arrived at the gates of the village, he saw a widow gathering sticks, and he asked her, would you please bring me a little water in a cup? And as she was going to get it, he called to her, bring me a bite of bread too. But she said, I swear by the Lord your God that I don't have a single piece of bread in the house. And I only have a handful of flour in the jar and a little cooking oil in the bottom of the jug. And I was just gathering a few sticks to go cook our last meal, and then my son and I will die. But Elijah said to her, don't be afraid. Go ahead and do just what you said, but make a little bread for me first. Then use what's left to prepare a meal for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. There will always be flour and olive oil left in your containers until the time when the Lord sends rain and the crops grow again. So she did as Elijah said, and she and Elijah and her family continued to eat for many days. There was always enough flour and olive oil left in the containers, just as the Lord promised Elijah. Now continue on with me. Sometime later, the woman's son became sick. He grew worse and worse, and finally he died. Then she said to Elijah, oh man of God, what have you done to me? How can you come here to the point out my sins and kill my son? She thought God was mad at her. That's why her son died. But Elijah replied, give me your son. And he took the child's body from her arms, carried him upstairs to the room where he was staying, and laid the body on his bed. Then Elijah cried out to the Lord, oh Lord my God, why have you brought tragedy to this widow who has opened her home to me, causing her son to die? And he stretched himself over the child 3 times and cried out to the Lord, oh Lord my God, please let this child's life return to him. The Lord heard Elijah's prayer, and the life of the child returned, and he revived. And Elijah brought him down from the upper room and gave him to his mother. Look, he said, your son is alive. Then the woman told Elijah, now I know for sure that you are a man of God, and the Lord truly speaks through you. The setting of this story is very interesting. You know, Elijah isn't sent to, let's say, a noble lord who hasn't followed the ways of Baal and has chosen to stay true to God. And he's got a storehouse because he's got servants that are really organized, and they saved up food and water for the famine. And Elijah didn't send him to somebody who had lots. Elijah was sent to somebody that had nothing. Very interesting. And she's like, I don't have any food to spare. Could you go find a noble lord down the street that loves God? Because I got enough literally for making one little loaf of bread, and then we're going to die because there's no more food. There's no food bank. My husband died, didn't leave me any inheritance. There's no welfare. I am dying of starvation. We're going to die. Elijah reassured her, don't be afraid. And this is the second thing I noticed. The first thing is that God sent Elijah there under the notion that he was sent there for him. He thought, I'm going to go there and God's going to take care of me. But what God had in mind was, no. I'm sending you to this widow, and you're going to get meals out of it, but I'm sending you to this widow so she will not die. See, it was a reverse judo move. And this is the second thing. Elijah tells her not to be afraid. Fear is one of our biggest enemies. When it comes to giving any money, like we see something like let's say, the earthquakes in Tibet, or we hear about the earthquake in Haiti, or the forest fires in Fort McMurray that devastated so many people's homes. We want to help. But I'm speaking from my perspective.
the first thing that pops into my mind when I want to help them is I want to help. Second thing, right follows it, fear. That I'm not going to have enough for my family if I give to one of those needs. And so, oftentimes in my past, I did nothing. Fear is one of the biggest roadblocks. Fear we're not going to have enough. That may come from you being a child and you didn't have enough. Or it might have come from the fact that you were with some parents that didn't have enough, and so it was tight, so tight all the time that you developed fear when it came to the topic of money and giving. And so hoarding is the natural, and I'm not talking about any kind of ridiculous hoarding. I'm talking about hoarding the food you have to feed your family. Make sure the pantry's full to take care of your family. Right? I got that sale on peanut butter, $3.50 a jar. I'm going to get 2 for my family. But one's enough for now, and I could give the second jar to the food bank. But fear stops me. It's my natural reaction, right? But here's the thing, right? When she was in need, help was already on the way. Because, again, God didn't do this for Elijah's sake. Elijah was fed by God with ravens. But God dried up that brook, and the ravens stopped bringing the Happy Meals. So Elijah would go and help that widow. Elijah, again, thought it was for him. There's that judo move of God. No, it was for her. And help was already on the way. See, her situation is actually why God sent Elijah to her house. God knew that up till now she only knew fear. And she was only seeing the circumstances and her own lack of resources. Here you have a single, hardworking mom who's left to her own devices, and her own devices aren't enough, but her own devices are all she has. The third thing I saw from this story was that God was giving her a chance to show her his goodness and increase her faith. To walk by faith, not by sight. And that's where the sermon title comes from. Sight is, I've got this much in my pantry. I'm okay. I've got this much in my bank account. I'm okay. Right? But what God's trying to show us sometimes is that in this world we live under a curse where you work hard, you work your fingers to the bone, and you barely make it. Having enough for today is all that matters. That's so counterintuitive, right? When I read Paul saying about his ministry, if I have clothing and I have food, I'm good. And I was like, what about a house, Paul? Come on, be a good Canadian pastor here. What about a house? You're saying you're fine if you just have food and clothing. Paul's like, yeah, I'm good because I've been naked and afraid and hungry. Literally beat up, stripped naked, so I'm happy if I have enough to eat and I have clothing on my back. And then we realize that we're in a faith where the shoulders of a homeless man carried the weight of the world, Jesus. Right? Never owned any property, never had a bank account, wandered the wilderness for 3 years with guys, did a little carpentry work on the side, was supported by women at one point. Back then, that was a no-no. Some business women believed in Jesus and supported him and his disciples in the Gospels. But God was sending Elijah to help this lady know that she wasn't alone. It wasn't her alone. It was God with her. God asks us to take a leap into faith in him and not in our own strength. I know very much what this is like. We had 4 daughters at home. And in grade 6, Emily, you thought boys were just hungry? Let me tell you something. Emily, in her growth spurt, would finish off a sleeve of crackers before bedtime. And she just ate a meal twice as big as mine. I moved here and some of my daughters, the bills were going up out of control. I'm like, what is going on? We had a van and it died 4 months before I paid it off. I'm like, no, I'm jamming 4 kids into the backseat of this Toyota Tercel hatchback, praying that cops don't see me on the way to church. And I'm like, oh boy, please, and then, my dad lent me some money for a van. And I was stressed out of my tree. And, I was really scared when we moved to Prince George, and I was making the same amount of money as in Quesnel, and my mortgage had doubled because the houses up there were worth more. And then my second van was about to die. And at that point, I felt God was asking me to trust Him and not my own ability to manage everything. And I signed up at the church in Prince George, taking $125 off each paycheck 10 years ago for the offering, because I'm so disorganized as a person. I mean, you think I'm really disorganized. I'm actually pretty good at it when it comes to things I want to do. But I'm like, you know what, God? I'm not going to be able to remember every week to go put money in the box at the church, to support the church. I'm just going to do this. I put in my void check, and my van died. And now they're taking $125 a paycheck. I got no van. I got no money saved up. I'm just stressed out of my tree. And somebody in the church who didn't know that I signed up for giving to God and the church said, I got this van I want to give you because I'm buying a new Ford Escape. And I said, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I got the van, and I felt, because that happened a couple months after I took that big leap of faith, because I love God and I wanted to help the church. And I felt God was saying, Bob, you think that you work for the church, so you don't need to give to the church. Bob, you need to give to the church, because there's other pastors that need help too, and there's people that we're buying food for and helping out. And so, totally against my intuitive side, I went and I did that. And I saw God catch me. Now, He didn't give me a brand new van. He didn't make me rich. But He gave me enough for that point in my life. And I remember my dad telling me the story about his pantry in Springfield, Ontario. He was an intern working at a little country church. And Mom got really mad at him because he tithed that week. She said, Randy, we need bread. There's enough for today, but not for Tuesday when you go back to school. What are we going to do? And you gave our money to the church, and you went down the street and you gave $10 to that poor guy. And Randy's like, what was I supposed to do? Right? It was one of those tense moments. And, I'm sitting at the country church house going, and Dad bowed and prayed for food, or prayed for the meal. And there was a knock at the door. And Dad opened the door. And there's a gentleman from the church who drove a bread truck at the door. And he said, Pastor Ryan, I got a bunch of bread that's going to expire tomorrow. The stores can't sell it. It's a little squished or it's going to expire. If you guys want it, you can freeze it. And there's a freezer full of bread there. Dad said, bring it in. And my mom just kind of sat there and went, okay. Okay. Now, especially the women, not having the pantry full stresses you right out, I know that. And the guys not having enough in the bank account. And there's enough for today, but not for Tuesday, and that fear is real. But what Elijah was saying to the lady was, in your scarcity, trust God, not the economic forecast. Now, I want to tell you that I've been to Africa to work with a little girl named Natasha in a village, and I helped dig a well, and I fed her, and I helped teach her in school. And I've been to Haiti, and in Haiti I've worked with a little girl named Giolandi, and I dug a well, and I taught her some stuff about Jesus, and I worked in her school for a while, and I gave some relief work to her. And I've been to Mexico and helped a little girl named Maya, and in that village, and I've done the same things there. And I planted a new work in Montreal. I've done a lot of stuff in my lifetime, haven't I? Right? I've done a lot of stuff, yeah. This isn't about me. I've done all that without getting on a plane, right? I've become a worldwide evangelist and never stood on a platform with more than 150 people in front of me. Because when you take part in the joyful giving to God's ministry, in Indonesia, I'm working every day by supporting Ben and Amy. In Montreal, I'm working with Morgan every day to work with 150 students from all over the world, and they know about Jesus. And I've never had to get on a plane and go visit Montreal, although I'd like to. Because that's what happens. When you give yourself to God, the money we give makes us Sycamusians, overseas missionaries, without ever leaving home, turns us into evangelists without standing on a platform and preaching, makes us nurses and teachers who take care of sick kids in another country. And even though you might only do hot lunch once in a while at the hub, every day you're reaching youth in this town, and you're taking them out for coffee, and you're listening to their problems, and you're doing family counseling with a girl that hates her mom and a mom that hates her daughter. You're trying to bring them together and be a bridge. You're doing that every day when you give to God. And so, here's the thing, last point. You guys will be glad it's the last point, right? It's one of those sermons I go, okay, I can't wait to get out of here. Okay, here's the thing, okay? The natural thing that happens when you give yourself to God and you place your trust in Him is that your heart is His and the rest will follow naturally. When Ryan and Sarisa Keene got saved 2 months after we started this church, when Ryan got saved, about a month later, I saw Ryan walk in and put something in the offering box. And you know what? I was blown away. And I'll tell you why. Because when somebody's a new Christian, the last thing they do as a discipline is trusting God with their money, because it's the hardest thing to let go of. And Ryan walks in, he puts something, he's been a Christian for 2 months. And I thought to myself, that blows my mind. He's giving. And you know what's funny is, like I said, I've never done a sermon on giving. I never told Ryan, I was his discipler. I never told Ryan to give a cent. Why did he do that? Because he felt so rescued by Jesus that his heart, out of gratitude, wanted to give to the church that changed his life and saved his marriage. That's why he did it. And I thought to myself, he gave God his heart, and his pocketbook opened up naturally. Now, I'm going to close the sermon off by getting you to turn to 2 Corinthians 8 and let the Word of God close this off, because he can do it way better than Bob Evans can. Okay? Now, you know we want to plant a church in Chase, right? You've heard me talk about Chase for 4 years. And so 2 Corinthians chapter 8 is about the church in Sycamus. It is. What do I mean? We'll see in a minute. Now, you know that we want to plant a church in Chase. And you know that we want to see youth programs there where there are none. And we want to see kids clubs where there are none. We want to see people getting Bibles where there are no Bibles. We want to help that town out. Just like Sam and Arm helped our church start. And the fellowship gave $100,000 to this church to get it going. So this chapter is about us as a church, and you'll see why. Look at verse 1. I want you to know, dear brothers and sisters, what God in his kindness has done through the church in Sycamus. They are being tested by many troubles. They're very poor, but they're also filled with abundant joy, which has overflowed in rich generosity. For I can testify that they gave not only what they could afford, but far more. And they did it out of their own free will. And they begged us again for the privilege of sharing in the gift for the believers in Chase. And they even did more than we hoped, for their first action was to give themselves to the Lord and to us, just as God wanted them to. So we've urged Paul Paquette in Chase, who encouraged our giving in the first place by starting a church there, to return to you and encourage you to finish this ministry of giving. And since you excel in so many ways, guys, in your faith, your gifted speakers, your knowledge, your enthusiasm, and your love, I want you now to excel in this gracious act of giving. And I'm not commanding you to do this, but I'm testing how genuine your love is by comparing it with the eagerness of the other churches. And you know the generous grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. Though he was rich, yet for our sakes he became poor, so by his poverty he could make you rich. You see, the believers at Chase need our help to get that church going. You guys don't have a lot of money, I know. Totally different socioeconomic situation than Sam and Arm and other communities. But I've seen you guys give, and that's why our church is here. And when you read it with our name in there and with Chase in there, and when you realize it's not a command to give, but it's I get to start a church in Chase. I get to pay the hydro and pay Kim. I get to start a ministry in a town I don't even live in. It starts to become something that you're like, wow, I can do this. And it is exciting. Now, Paul said, you know the generous grace of Jesus. He was rich, yet for our sakes he left heaven and became poor. Born in a barn, grew up as a carpenter, and by his poverty living the life of a homeless man who died naked and alone, he made us rich. Jesus gave everything for us. And that is why we give. It's got to be the only reason. I will never manipulate you. I will never, ever manipulate you to give. It's got to be something in your heart that you take a leap of faith out of love for Jesus and for people. And then when you do that, leap of faith out of love, you'll find that Jesus is there to catch you. And you'll have enough. Because one day the curse in this world is going to break. In the meantime, you'll have enough. Even though the pantry looks empty, you'll have enough if you leap out of love into his arms. Let's bow our heads and just pray for a minute. I'll get the band to come up here, and this is something that is between you and God. I don't know who gives what in this church. I never will. I have no idea. I purposely do not want to know. When Jesus saw that little lady at the temple put 2 pennies in a box, and it was all she had, and she was trusting God for the next meal. When she did that, Jesus said she gave way more than those rich cats that just wrote a check out of their $1 million bank account. And so Jesus is just asking you to trust him, believe that he loves you, and he's enough. That's all he's trusting. So you talk to Jesus for a minute. And then we're going to ask the Lord to come and give us boldness and grace as a church through this last song. Remember that tune. Here's my heart.